passing lane. Sky's a jam. Dynamite dunk, and the crowd loves it.
Welcome back to another episode of Pistons Intellect. I'm your host, Jack Kelly, and boy, have we got a lot to talk about today. The Detroit Pistons win their second game in a row over the Chicago Bulls. They're now 2-1 on the season. Before we get into today's show, I'm your host, Jack Kelly. You can follow me on Twitter at Jack_Kelly_313. And before we get to it, if you're feeling so kind, please hit that subscribe button. Please drop a like, drop a comment. I appreciate all of it. I'm always in there interacting with people. Time to get to it. Your Detroit Pistons get a big time W over the Bulls, 118-102. And this is the first time outside of opening nights where the Pistons have been 1-0 that the Detroit Pistons have been above 500 since 2018. So it's been a minute, but I'm excited to dive into the show. So let's get to it. First of all, I think you have to start with Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren. Those two were absolutely immense in tonight's game in terms of from start to finish, controlling the game. If Jalen controlled the glass, and then Cade offensively, a little bit of a quiet second quarter, but apart from that, made a heap of plays, heap of highlight plays, heap of plays that people might not see, but those two finished with a combined 48 points, 19 rebounds, 15 assists between the two of them. So I want to start with Cade. So he finished with 25 points and 10 assists. And from the jump, he was aggressive. The Bulls lack sort of that true rim protector, at least in their starting lineup with Nikola Vucevic. And Cade was aggressive immediately. He got 2 and 1 plays to open the game. And he was looking aggressive and willing to get into the paint and finish as opposed to pass, which he's probably been a bit too pass happy in the past couple of games. So he was attacking from the jump. He had a bit of a quiet second quarter, but then in the third quarter, he scored 9 or 10 points, and each of those points got the crowd up and about. He had like this brilliant step back three, and then he followed that up with a cross step back on Kobe White around the right elbow, and Kobe White almost went flying into the crowd. He was backpedaling that much, just not expecting it. Cade drained that. And then he scored another couple of buckets and got to the line. And the Bulls, Zach LaVine in this one, he scored 51, and he pretty much kept the Bulls in this one. He was firing on all cylinders in the third quarter, and it was kind of like the Bulls. So the Pistons had a halftime lead of 13 points, and LaVine was cooking, and he got it back to around 3 points, 4 points in that third quarter. But that's when Cade took over and hit those aforementioned jumpers I talked about, and the Pistons were able to just get the lead back out to that 7-8 mark and withstand a huge flurry of ridiculous shot making from Zach LaVine. And then towards the fourth quarter, Cade was able to close, got to the rim a couple of times, got a couple of free throws, and if very, very similar to the first game, if Cade wasn't hitting the shot, Jalen Duren was just flying in, cleaning it up. And I guess it's time to talk about him. He had 6 offensive rebounds, and like I said, was just flying in from everywhere. He had multiple putbacks in the last quarter. He was huge. The Bulls had no answer for him. He started the game kind of more as a facilitator. He had 3 assists early in the first quarter, and this was something we saw Monty sort of set up, particularly against Miami, and I spoke about it in my recap there, was utilizing Jalen Duren at the top of the three-point line as sort of that DHO hub. If he's not setting a screen and rolling, he's making passes, and that's where in the first quarter, Isaiah Stewart got a couple of those post-ups again, right at the rim, right in the 4 to 5 feet away from the rim, and Jalen Duren hit him for a couple of post hooks, and then he had this beautiful feed off a pick and roll with Cade, where he rolled, got the ball around the middle of the key, received the pass from Cade, and then hit a cutting Asar Thompson for the dunk. And I tweeted it out, there's a video there, but that kind of short roll passing just opens up so much for this team, especially when there's limited shooting around. If you have cutters like Asar flying in from the corner, to have a big man who can roll and make that read helps so much, especially with the way the defenses can pack the paint. If they've got to still account for a cutting Asar Thompson, that all helps and is a way to counteract the spacing issues. So the passing was on full display. He finished with 5 assists, and I tweeted this out just recently. Jalen Duren, now this is a stat for you. Jalen Duren, according to StatHead or Basketball Reference, joins LeBron James as the only teenager to score 23 points, grab 15 rebounds, and dish 5 assists. So I don't even know if I need to say anything else after that. It was a truly special game. Jalen's arguably being the Pistons' best player through 3 games, my mistake. It's in terms of consistencies, had a double-double in each. And, I mean, I spoke about it in the off-season on the pin down over at Detroit Bad Boys, but the defense was the thing for me with Jalen Duren that's going to take him to the next level. And him playing alongside Isaiah Stewart under the tutelage of Dan Burke and Monty Williams seems to be paying dividends. And there is no way I expected him to look like this in year 2, especially this early in year 2. This, for me, is like year 4 Jalen Duren right now. This is like a guy that's been in the league. This isn't a teenager. So he's absolutely hooping. He, alongside Cade, their pick and roll just gave the Bulls fits. If Cade wasn't finding Duren for the lob, Cade was scoring. And then if Cade wasn't finding Duren, initially it was more of a delayed roll and he would find Duren around the basket after manipulating the defense. And then if the defense was caught up on Duren on the roll, Cade would kick it to the weak side or the strong side to an Alec Burks to knock down 3. And that is just peak Cade Cunningham. And him and Jalen Duren might very well be those top 2 guys that sort of take this team to the next level. At least it's looking like that right now. So awesome game for Jalen Duren and Cade Cunningham. And I just want to remind people that those 2 played less than 40 minutes together last season. So they're only going to gain more chemistry. And yeah, it's looking extremely promising. And the fact the Pistons got Jalen Duren with pick 13 is starting to look like the big steal of the 2021 draft. So awesome game for those 2, that's for sure. And can't wait to see them against Chet Holmgren and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on Monday night. Should be very fun.
The next player I want to give some shine is Asar Thompson, the Pistons rookie. He finished with 9 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists, and then as per usual was in the passing lanes with a steal and had a huge block down the stretch. And I mean, as nice as the box score was, for me it was the plays and the timing of the plays that Asar made, particularly in that 4th quarter. But he made Zach LaVine's life hell down the stretch in that last 4 to 5 minutes when the game was really there to be won. Zach LaVine, who I mentioned, had 51 points and could not miss a shot, particularly in the 1st and 3rd quarters. Asar made his life tough, made it miserable, forced him into tough shots. He forced a turnover off Zach in front of the Bulls bench. He had a huge block on Zach LaVine, and he just made a number of key plays defensively, and not to mention the rebounding. He had a couple of key offensive rebounds to generate the Pistons a second chance look, which I think got free throws for Jalen Duren, and he was just flying everywhere. It's the passing as well. He had the 5 assists. The connective passing, we talk about it all the time. I feel like the word connector, connective, is almost becoming a bit of a buzzword now, but it exemplifies Asar's game on this team so perfectly. And he had a number of grab and goes where just catching the defense off guard with his ability to grab it off the defensive glass and then just push it in transition and get the Pistons an open look. I want to say 2 of his assists were of that variety. And then he had this awesome bounce pass assist to a cutting Stu in the 4th, which opened Stu up for a huge dunk. And to put the Pistons up by about 10, I believe, down the stretch. And the game wasn't over yet, but it was damn close after that. And Asar kind of cut to the middle, got to the nail area, the free throw line, and then just bounced this 2-handed bounce pass to Stu, who was just wide open for a dunk. And yeah, he just made a number of plays, and it was really cool to see him score the 9 points. I think he shot 3 of 6 from the field, 3 of 7, and got to the free throw line 4 times. Didn't hit a 3, but right now that doesn't matter with the defense this team's playing. And as I mentioned in the previous segment, kind of him cutting and just being constantly available, pushing in transition. He had a really, really solid game, really good game. And yeah, he's just come at the perfect time of this rebuild. Sliding in now is kind of that third or fourth core piece. If he was to come in around the same time as Killian Hayes or maybe even Cade when this team didn't have as much talent, maybe it would look a bit different for him. But right now, he fits perfectly, especially on defense. The way he's able to guard the other team's best players. He gave DeMar DeRozan plenty of trouble in that first half before he was matched up on Zach LaVine to try and slow him down. So just such a vital weapon for this team on the defensive end. And then, as I mentioned, with the rebounding and his ability to push the tempo, it's game-changing and such a point of difference for this Pistons team right now. Then I just want to move on to the bench. They had a really key, pivotal stretch towards the end of the third quarter. As I mentioned, Zach LaVine was going crazy and the Bulls had sort of cut the lead down to 3 or 4. The bench was able to come in, a lineup of Jaden Ivey, Marcus Sasser, Marvin Bagley, who's been huge in these 4 games, as well as Joe Harris came in and was able to hit a 3. And yeah, those guys were able to just stabilize it, make a few key defensive plays, and just keep the lead to around 7 or 8 just in time for the starters, and that to bring it home in the fourth. Alec Burks, just another huge game. He had 18 points, 6 of 10 from deep. So just that 3-point shooting, whether he's playing with the full bench unit or alongside the starters, he's been huge. And as I mentioned, Marvin Bagley, he had another double-digit scoring game, 11 points, 6 boards, and he's just working his ass off. He's working his ass off. He's on the glass trying his best. And, when you can put alongside him Joe Harris, who can come in and just hit a 3, Marcus Sasser, he hit this crucial pull-up jumper, just the confidence of him to do that in a tight, close game so early in his rookie career is really cool to see. And then Jaden Ivey, 7 points, played the 22 minutes, which seems to be around the average for him right now, is that low 20-minute mark. Had 3 assists, and he in the first half had a stretch where he had a huge dunk, a two-handed one kind of coming from baseline, and then he got the steal and then went for a big windmill dunk. He unfortunately got blocked by the rim, but you love to see that intensity. Maybe you might say just finish that play, but I don't know. I like to see him play with a flair, play his natural game, and he had a smile on his face. I don't think it bothered the coaching staff because he worked his ass off to get that steal and create that opportunity for himself. So learning moment for him maybe, but yeah, quietly a decent game. It didn't feel like Jaden was in the game long enough to make a huge impact, but when he was in there, he was a positive. And just the way he's fighting through screens and stuff now, he still gets hung up here and there on screens, especially on some Andre Drummond screens, which are huge physical screens. So he's still got to work on that. But there's flashes where he's really getting skinny and able to slide past screens. And just his overall work rate defensively is much better. And look, I still aren't a big proponent of him coming off the bench, but I mean, if to see this defensive effort, I can't really fault it right now as much as I want to see him in the starting lineup. If this stretch of him being on the bench is going to allow him or make him learn to bring this kind of intensity every night, then I think this is maybe a masterstroke from Monty Williams. As much as I might not have initially agreed with it, I'm happy to take a fat L on that one. But shout out to the bench. They've been huge so far, and I'll have to check the numbers probably in the morning, but I would dare say they must be in the top 10 for scoring right now, especially with Alec Burks and Marvin Bagley just providing such a huge scoring punch off the bench. The final aspect of this game I want to hit on is just defense. That's what I've got in my notes here. Just flat out defense in caps. The Pistons currently rank 7th in the NBA for defensive rating, giving up 102 points per 100 possessions, which is really freaking good. They currently rank 5th in the NBA for net rating, so they have a point differential of around 9 points per 100 possessions, which is incredible. It means they're defending and then they're scoring more than enough offensively to create a 9-point gap per 100 possessions. So they're holding teams down to around 102 points per 100 possession, and then they're scoring enough on the other end, scoring more than enough on the other end. And they're first for total rebounds and total rebounding percentage. So rebounding percentage is how many of the available rebounds you're grabbing, and the Pistons are grabbing the most of the available rebounds in the league. So, I mean, they're just some stats, but if you want to just go by the eye test, they are playing physical, they are imposing. Other teams are caught off guard by their length. They had tonight another 4 blocks in the game, which is probably a bit low for where they've been, averaging 9.5 before the night. But if they're not blocking the shot, they're offering up really good contests around the basket. And if they're not blocking shots, they're getting deflections, and it's just all out grit. They're picking up a lot of fouls, it feels like ticky-tack fouls. There's a heap tonight where it probably didn't look like a foul, but I think it just comes with the overall physicality they're playing with. The refs are sort of adjusting to probably calling that. So, I mean, the refs were frustrating tonight, I'm not going to lie. I normally don't like to get into that because I think being an NBA ref or a basketball ref in general is one of the hardest jobs there is. But there were a ton of questionable calls tonight, but ultimately it didn't matter. But look, I'll live with those fouls, the frustration that comes from some of these ticky-tack fouls, because the Pistons is just playing with so much physicality on that end. And I mean, one of the big questions, and I guess some Pistons fans might not have agreed with when thinking about the starting front court of Asar, Stu and Duren, is just obviously the lack of spacing. Can they play defense good enough to offset that? And they certainly are. They're rebounding the crap out of the ball. They're defending. I mean, Jalen, Duren and Stu set the tone for me defensively. Even in a down game for Stu, I still thought he just played great defense. Still pulled in the 9 boards and was just his usual physical self. And I love seeing him and Duren sort of... There was a point where Cade got quite frustrated with the ref on one of those fouls that probably weren't. It was questionable. And Duren and Stu, you can just tell, set the tone defensively. They calmed Cade down. And yeah, there's some real leadership growing. Stu was already a leader. He was the sort of the de facto leader of this team, or heart and soul alongside Cade. But to see him and Duren now growing together as leaders, as a duo, is special and should really hold this defense in good stead for the next foreseeable future. So great stuff on the defensive end. That was the defense was what was going to help this team win more this season. Offense has still got plenty to work on. I don't even want to get into the starting lineup stuff because right now it's not mattering too much. I think that's a discussion for later down the track when some more players are healthy. But I think you keep it as is right now. I wouldn't be astray to sort of maybe swapping out Killian Hayes for some shooting, but right now things are working, so you can't complain too much about the lineups. And if this team's going to play defense like this, they're going to continue to be in every single game and probably winning more games than they're not. I get the competition hasn't been amazing so far, but to think where this team was at the end of April last season to where they are right now, this is quite the turnaround early. And yeah, enjoy it, Pistons fans. I've never felt like this, honestly, in my 10 to 12 years of being a fan. I don't think I've had this much hope and excitement. Maybe the 17-18 season where the Pistons started 14-6. But man, this feels different because these guys are all so young and have a brand new head coach, coaching staff, and it feels like something that's sustainable for the long haul. So enjoy it, Pistons fans. This defense is really, really special. All right, Pistons fans, that'll do it for today's episode of Pistons Intellect. Your Detroit Pistons come away 16-point victors over the Chicago Bulls. They are now 2-1 and sit 5th in the Eastern Conference right now. They'll play the Oklahoma City Thunder on Monday night, and I'll be sure to bring you a game recap as quick as I can after that one. That should be an exciting, fun game and a true test to see where this team is at. But until then, drop a comment below. Let me know anything I might have missed, your favourite moments of the night. Have your expectations now changed? And if you could also drop a like and hit subscribe if you haven't already, I'd be greatly appreciative. But until Monday night, go Pistons.